Okay, it looks like we are live, and we're going to do a double check on the audio. We don't have much time here for a pregame show. We're right up against it. And let me see if I can get this to load in so that I can double check my audio and make sure that we're good. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, testing. Double check on the audio coming right up on 4:15. Okay, we are good. No chipmunk voice today, and this is another emergency broadcast. This was very short notice. I just scheduled this broadcast a few minutes ago, about 35 minutes or so ago, and I did text the Clyvester to see if he could join us, and he does not do Skype, but hopefully you guys can talk him into either Skyping in, or I can do FaceTime. I don't like to do the Google Hangouts anymore just because the quality is terrible on those. So Skype is a higher quality situation, and or FaceTime, Apple FaceTime. So maybe he can call in on either one of those methods would work. I could bring the Clyvester in, but I put the link in the description of the video to his video, which was the impetus for this live stream, is this talk about the super fakes. And I'll go ahead and button this button. Somebody complained about my hairy chest, so I'll go ahead and button this button. We do anything for the viewers. So there's been some talk about these super fakes going around and coming out, some new ones coming out that are literally super fakes, super fake Rolexes that are, by all accounts, or by the accounts that we've heard, difficult to detect as being a fake, even if someone opens up the back of the watch. So the Clyvester came out with a really cool theory, or a possible set of scenarios that it's very interesting. I think the rampant speculation and the high prices and all that are going to come to an end for various reasons, but this could be one more catalyst for the absurd high prices on some Rolex models to come crashing down. And if you haven't seen the video, definitely watch it. The link is in the description. And in a nutshell, what the Clyvester was suggesting, and he explained it a lot more eloquently than I could ever do, but what he was basically saying is, if these super fakes start getting into the marketplace and into the gray market and so forth, and people start realizing that they're around and that people are selling these super fakes as real, that all of a sudden people aren't going to want to buy gray market anymore. And that this will stifle, this will neuter the speculators, the folks that are buying these watches to flip and so forth, that they won't be able to resell them because people will be gun shy. People will be scared that they're actually buying fakes. So this will ruin the gray market, which could be a very good thing for legitimate buyers, people that want to actually buy these watches and wear them, use them, maybe collect them. And so you would just go to an AD and buy a watch just like you did in the old days. You know, the old days that I can remember, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s. You know, where you could just walk right into an AD and buy the watch with a discount, usually about a 20% discount on steel. I got as high as a 40% discount on an all gold Rolex one time. So interesting hypothesis, and interesting the whole concept that these fakes flooding the market could actually destroy the gray market and motivate people to go and actually buy, as an end user, actually go and buy from an AD. What do you all think about all that? That sounds pretty wild to me. That sounds kind of interesting. And I commented on Clyve's video. I said, the real question is, we'll do a quick time check here. The real question is, how many of these fakes, first of all, how good are the fakes? Are they really as good as some of these people say? A. And if they are that good, how many of them can actually be pushed into the market? How are they going to get them into the gray market? Who's going to buy them to resell them? These are the kinds of things. I'm going to cut this other light on, get a little light on this side there. These are the questions. Because here's the thing, if most gray market dealers, if they're buying them, if they're going out the back door of an AD, for example, then that gray market buyer knows that that's a real watch, right? If it's going out the back door of an AD. Or if they buy it from somebody who bought it from an AD and they have reason to believe that that person actually did buy it from an AD. You know, if some shady character comes up and has like 10 Daytonas, right? to sell, you know, maybe those aren't real, right? So this is the question: how sophisticated are these counterfeiters going to be as far as how they get them into the market? Are they going to use straw men to do it? How are they going to do this? Because it seems like to me, it would have to be some decent volume to really affect the market. So they'd have to really start getting these things into the marketplace in some numbers. And speaking of high quality watches that are very difficult to fake, let's take a look at this spring drive. Let's take a close look real quick on the spring drive on this stunner. So good luck faking that, folks. There's a lot of handwork in the spring drive, in the Grand Seikos in general. There's a lot of delicate work involved in all of that. So far, they haven't really even tried to fake those as far as I know. Of course, it's a low volume watch anyway, so there's that. And there is no real gray market for them, so I don't think we have to worry about any high quality fakes of the spring drive coming anytime soon. But Daytonas, Pepsis, Submariners, what do you guys think? Okay, let me take a look at the comments and get caught up here on the comments. Carlos says hello. Let's see. Much like Panerai, Rolexes are relatively simple machine-made watches, so counterfeiting them isn't exactly difficult. There you go. And too many Rolex fakes. I believe that it's a good reason why I go with the Speedmaster and Grand Seiko, because they're too complicated to replicate. Well, I think they could probably fake a Speedmaster, but yeah, I would go with the Grand Seiko between those two choices anyway. All right, and let's see, especially spring drive. I can't wait for China to try and fake it with an extreme fail. Yeah, I wonder if they'll try. Cliver's rules, there you go. Rancher was right, there you go. And if Rolex starts refusing to authenticate watches bought outside their ADs, then resale value will take a huge hit. This happened to Panerais, and it destroyed their second-hand value. Interesting. I know that Rolex will keep a list of watches that are stolen and things like that, and then if they come into their possession, you know, a stolen watch, for example, then they will contact the owner and arrange for it to be returned to the rightful owner. So they'll do that. But yeah, as far as cooperating with outside parties on validating watches and all that, Clyvester was saying that they're already not doing that, that they've stopped doing that. So yeah, they're trying to get it so that everybody just deals with an AD, period, full stop. That's what they want. They want everybody either buying used watches or new watches from a Rolex AD. And that's where they're headed, where they're trying to go. And if a bunch of fakes do start showing up on the gray market, that certainly might help Rolex with that mission. People will be very gun shy to buy used. Remember back in the day when we used to buy used watches, again, late 70s, early 80s, I bought some used watches, but there was no such thing as the internet or anything like that. And really, just like buying a used car, you were really buying the person that was selling it, not the item. If you went to their home and their home was well kept, and they lived in Potomac, Maryland, they had a nice home, and you knew where they worked, and you met their wife and so on, and they were just good folks, and they bought the watch, new or whatever. You had a good feeling for the whole situation, and of course you examined the watch, and you went ahead and you bought the watch. But with the internet, there are a lot of issues. So if the fakes are as that good, I guess you're saying that good, would you consider one as a beater? That's a very good question. I mean, if they're really that good, and if the movements are really good, and they hold up well, if they do all of that, then basically what you're doing is you're sidestepping all the Rolex overhead of all that marketing money they put out and all that. See, the fakers, they're not paying all that, right? They're just building the watch. And so you're getting the watch. My guess is these watches will probably sell for around $1,000, I would guess. I mean, just throwing a number out there. And so that $1,000 is going more towards building the watch than all kinds of advertising and all the other overhead that Rolex has, right? So yeah, they can probably build a pretty good watch for $1,000 and sell it. So yeah, would you wear that as a beater? I wouldn't, because I've gotten spoiled by the Grand Seiko and the accuracy of the spring drive. So I wouldn't. But if I was still wearing Rolexes, I don't know what I would do. That's a very good question. If they're that good, I would be tempted to just wear one. What the hell? I mean, it'll do what it'll do, right? If it's just as thin, in other words, let's say it's a GMT Pepsi, and it's just as thin, it's got all the benefits of the real Rolex, and you can get it for $1,000. Well, that means you can take many, many thousands of dollars and invest it, right? And then just wear the $1,000 Pepsi. I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question. Very good question. Rolex super fakes may also increase interest in other options in the market, such as GS. Yeah, I think GS is garnering interest just because people are starting to realize they're pretty damn good watches. I mean, like Bark and Jack, for example, climbing into the Rolex camp. I mean, the Grand Seiko camp. A lot of the watch people out there have taken a closer look at Grand Seiko. And I will definitely take some credit for that, because a lot of it started when I started my first video about this watch, comparing this watch to the Rolex Sub and challenging the supremacy of the Sub. That watch got hundreds of thousands of views and stirred a lot up in the watch community. Stirred up a lot of action. And then some subsequent videos. And then, of course, the videos I did promoting that stunner, that kind of got the whole 9F discussion going, and that it's not just your ordinary quartz, and kind of got that discussion ramped up to a fever pitch. So those watches started selling pretty well. So yeah, I think the Grand Seiko is word's getting out that it's no joke. David's in the house, and he says hi. Let's see here. So I wonder that if fakes crash consumer trust in the gray market, then Rolex will go ahead and start shipping more watches to ADs. Well, my guess is they're making enough watches to meet demand. My guess is the reason that there's a shortage is there are speculators hoarding watches. Speculators sitting on, a half dozen watches or whatever, right? Those half dozen watches could be on the wrist of end users, right? If they weren't hoarding them. So my guess is if the gray market gets destroyed, that there won't be a shortage anymore, that you'll be able to go into an AD and buy the watch you want, just like the old days. I think the only reason why there's a shortage is because there are a lot of people hoarding extra watches that they don't need and don't intend to use. And people that are collecting watches because they think they're a good investment and they're holding their value and they, they're parking money in them and they think they might go up in value. See, if all that is undermined, if all that is destroyed, if the gray market is destroyed and therefore the overinflated, retail market is destroyed, then all those speculators and all those watches are going to come back into the marketplace. And I think that you'll just be able to walk right into an AD and buy a watch, and probably at a discount. Clyvester is in the house. He is in the house. Hey, Clyvester, you could also call in using FaceTime. I think everybody would love to hear from you. I'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions on your video. We're, of course, talking about your video. I just launched my FaceTime just in case the Clyvester decides to call in, because he is all that and a bag of chips. So the only thing about FaceTime is it doesn't fill the whole screen, but that's okay. It's kind of like a vertical orientation. Clyvester says he doesn't use Skype. Come on, Clyvester, it's free. Download Skype and get it running on your machine. It's higher quality video. That's why I like to use Skype. Now FaceTime is high quality too, but I used to use the Hangouts, the Google Hangouts, and they're just garbage quality. So let's see. I guarantee that there will be a whole lot more steel sports Rolexes coming to market. Many of these speculators can't afford to keep these watches in a downturn. Okay, that'll be interesting to see. The shortage is caused by customers taking the steel pieces straight to the resellers for a small profit. And also, I think some of those resellers are sitting on numerous watches, and so, those watches are not on the wrist of end users. So therefore, there's a shortage. Oh, Clyve is calling. Okay, let me see if I can answer it. Wait, I can't answer it on the computer. Why is the computer not working? Oh, Clyve, here we go. Clyve, I'm FaceTiming you. Clyve is not available for FaceTime. Hey, Clyve? Clyve, can you hear me? Okay, it failed. Why is it not working? I wanted to answer you on the computer, Clyve, so I can show you, and it says Clyve is not available for FaceTime on my computer. All right, I'm going to message you. Hey, Clyve. Clyve, for some reason, it's not connecting on the computer. I could only answer you on the phone.
I didn't think about it on the computer.
Well, but I should have been.
I'm on my little MacBook, and the screens and the camera sucks on it.
Yeah, but I should have.
You can answer on the computer?
But I think I should have been able to answer you, but it says Clyve is unavailable on the computer.
All right, let me try calling you on the computer.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
I'll try calling you from my computer.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Yep. All right. All right, there we go. We're going to see what happens with that. And I'm going to try to call him also. Clyve FaceTime. Okay, it says not available. All right, so we'll see if he's able to call me on the FaceTime on the computer. Hey, Clyve, so you're on the computer now?
I'm on the computer now.
You know what's funny is for some reason I've got FaceTime running on my computer, and I've got you up on FaceTime on my computer, but it still says that you're not available for FaceTime on the computer. I don't know why that would be.
That's
Um,
weird.
let me try one more time to call you on the computer, and let's see if it's able to connect to you.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Here we go. Let me get my headset on. Ah. There we go. This way they can hear you.
Cool.
They can hear the Clyvester. So, and there I've got you on with your backlighting, with your beautiful backlighting. They can't see your magnificent hair, but that's all right. They know what the Clyvester looks like.
The thing is, I was using the my new iPhone, and that thing's got fantastic cameras on the thing.
Yeah, I know, but the only way I can pipe the audio through the live stream is if you come in through the computer. Now they're hearing you like crystal clear, wall to wall, treetop tall. But the important thing is that they hear you. So here's the thing: the questions I had about your video. How quickly do you think they can get these things out in volume into the market? And how do you think they're going to do that?
Well, it depends. Keep in mind, it's not like there's really a super fake consumer helpline where they'll answer all our questions.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's probably Cantonese.
Absolutely.
And also, Jen will not answer any of my questions directly.
Gotcha.
So, I've been hearing this for a while, though, about the people who are doing. I was talking about some replicas,
Mm-hmm.
and I had some people contact me that were also kind of snooping around the replica forums.
Mm-hmm.
Had people telling me a couple of years ago, said these guys are upping their game,
Okay.
and they're getting it's like the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
They keep coming at it every year, and they get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I think the replicas is one of the reasons why Panerai has taken it up the poop shoot.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. And of course, Panerai, on the other hand, when they're making, Panerai was literally overcharging for watches.
Mm-hmm.
Simple rudimentary designs using off-the-shelf ETAs.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Chinese were like, "Fuck, we could do that real easy."
Yeah.
But as they're getting better, I've had more and more people contacting me saying that almost to the point of you have to. I mean, almost they're saying they're almost with the case
Mm-hmm.
and the bracelet. They're almost getting on a one-to-one basis. In other words, perfect copies.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's my real question. Okay, let's assume they can make them to that kind of quality, including the movement when they open up the case. It looks really good, right? Let's assume that. How do they?
And let's assume even a skilled watchmaker may or may not catch it.
That's right. Okay, so let's make that assumption. So here's my issue: is how do they get them into the market? Because there's one thing for a gray market dealer to buy 5 or 6 watches coming out the back door of an AD, right? He knows those are real. Okay, he's dealing with the AD, a crooked AD, right? Okay, so
Craig, I'm here in the middle of the flyover states.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there is no shortage of Asians here in BFE.
Mm-hmm.
So simply,
But what I'm saying is, if some guy with like broken English with a cardboard box, with 5 Daytonas in it, approaches a gray market dealer and says, "Here, I've got 5 Daytonas," that gray market dealer is going to have some real questions, right?
Right.
So what my point is, they've got to be somewhat sophisticated as to how they get these into the market. And that, to me, that seems like the biggest hurdle that they will face. How do you think they're going to do it?
Okay. Now we're talking about. I was mentioning the iPhone. Remember back before they had the universal release, before you've released iPhones almost simultaneously around the planet.
Yep.
When we got them first and everyone else had to wait.
And people were flying somewhere with 5 phones and reselling them. Yeah.
Right. But even here in freaking Oklahoma City, literally in front of the Apple store, you'd have a whole bunch of Asian people that looked obviously Asian and wearing labor, not
You,
particularly well dressed,
buying up the
stand
phones.
and one guy, middle aged,
Hmm.
portly Asian, would come up and literally with a wad of money and hand each of the Asians, after conversations
Hmm.
in presumably Chinese,
Yep.
and hand them money.
Yep.
And then they would leave the store, and he would be waiting right there, and he would take the phone from them,
Yep.
and then he'd give them like $100 or something like that,
Sure.
or some amount.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember that.
And yeah, and I think it would be the opposite. I think it would be the opposite of that.
So they're going to get straw men to
Yep.
sell these things to the gray market dealer, but even finding those straw men in volume, how easy is that going to be?
Like I said, there's a lot of Asians, or they could just simply have people just on Craigslist selling them.
Hmm.
Some
I
as
see. I think
dumbasses on
that's going to
Craigslist
be,
asking for a small.
yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. I mean, assuming that these gray market dealers are not totally crooked, right? Let's assume that. Let's assume they don't want to knowingly sell fake watches, right? Because if they're willing to knowingly sell fake watches, then yeah, they can buy the box of 2 dozen Daytonas from the guy and then just straight up resell them, right? Knowing full well that they're fake, right? But
Right.
let's assume that the gray market dealer is being duped as well. Let's assume that. Then that means they've got the counterfeiters have to have a pretty sophisticated, high volume way of getting straw men, like you said, to get these things into the market.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, how they do it. As we start getting more information on all of this, it's going to be really interesting to see how these scammers pull all this off, if they do, in fact, pull it off.
Well, and the thing is, though, literally, there could be possibly good faith purchasers for these. Maybe not the most sophisticated consumer, but literally, um,
So,
something like I said.
so, so so really probably the most likely scenario is like you said, these things end up on eBay, and these sellers are able to create profiles on eBay and somehow fake the good ratings and all that kind of stuff, and start selling these things off multiple accounts on eBay to be able to
Right.
generate some kind of volume, right?
Correct.
And that's probably the most likely scenario. And I would think Rolex would be on that like stink on you know what, and be trying to shut that down and going after eBay and everybody in sight. So this could be like the watch wars, right? 2020 could
Possibly,
be the
or
year of the watch wars.
well, and like I said, some people would argue that it might damage Rolex overall, the overall reputation, because on the other hand, if Rolex, keep in mind, Rolex is in it to win it. They
Hmm.
probably have plans, business plans for 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Now, but on the other hand, Rolex could say we might take a slight hit temporarily, but why not allow them to flood the gray market at first,
Hmm.
and break the backs of the gray market?
Yeah, that
You
could
see,
be that could definitely be risky business though. Like you said, it might just drive people to other brands. It might really harm them.
if
Uh,
they could no, if they could go after Rolex, they could literally go after anywhere else. But
well,
um,
but there's no money
it
in
tells you.
like for example going after Grand Seiko. There's no money there because there's a very limited market. So
But well,
Rolex
that's
is where
true.
the money is.
Well, it's almost like what they used to say about Mac guys.
Yeah,
The Windows people used to say about Mac guys, you have security through obscurity,
exactly.
or your OS,
It,
your OS
yeah,
sucks so much that virus
yeah, they're
writers don't
not going
even
to go
support
after
it.
it. Yeah, yeah. and they still to some extent don't go after it that much. You know, the market is still relatively small, but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting times ahead. I think there's no doubt this is going to be something to keep an eye on and see
If
what
Rolex,
happens.
but and besides intercepting shipments, I've heard like the Rolex has always been very, very forceful about having customs find and intercept and destroy fake watches.
Mhm.
But if Rolex really wanted to crack down that problem, they wouldn't. They would be sharing their information. They'd be sharing their database.
Yeah, Jeff has a good comment in the chat. Why would Rolex want to shut it down? It would make sure you buy from an AD.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That was the point I was getting to. That would break the backs of because right now Rolex is not sharing information
yeah.
unless you're in their supply chain, unless you're an AD. If you're, Govberg can wire. I had a
And
my
they could actually make an advertising campaign around this. They could be like, there are these fakes coming out of China. They appear to be the same as a Rolex, but they're really not. There are details in the movement and all that. The quality is just not there. But a lot of people are being fooled. Do not buy from eBay. Do not buy from blah 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 blah.
to get it,
Be sure
to
to
get an
only
authentic
buy from an
Rolex.
AD, an authorized dealer.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they could try to leverage that, and they may have to. But
Well,
again,
and
it's going to be interesting.
here's also the thing though, as well. If they, David SW and Crown and Caliber and all these other Bob's watches, if any of them get through their defenses, and some people might have overpaid and pay this secondary insane freaking price,
Mm-hmm.
and they might have the watch for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
They won't even know anything until it finally, they may not know anything for years until it breaks down. They have to send it up to an AD or
Absolutely.
to for
Absolutely.
service, and only then they'll hear. But can you imagine the screaming? Could you imagine the screaming will happen if you paid one of these online guys, if you paid Roman Scharf or $18,000 and he ended up selling you a fake watch? He may not have known
Well,
it. He may have sold in good faith.
what will be really interesting is if these fakers somehow figure out how to intercept an actual Rolex shipment, right? And then substitute their watches for the
Mm.
Rolexes and let them go to the ADs and let the ADs sell the fakes, and then they have the real ones that they can also sell.
Well, and like I said, but now Rolex ADs, they can actually tie into the Rolex, and basically verify internally with Rolex that
Well, they just have to hack.
this.
All they have to do is hack those computers and hack that information too.
No, that's true.
Here we go, folks. Rolex Wars. Coming up 2020 is the year of the Rolex Wars. We're going to have all kinds of fake Rolexes and real Rolexes from gray market and fake Rolexes from ADs. You heard it here first, okay,
No,
folks?
not fame. I don't think fake from ADs.
You don't
No,
think
I
they're
think
going to pull that one off?
no.
That would be the ultimate, though.
I
You
actually,
you got to
I
admit,
think.
though, that would be the ultimate, right?
Oh yeah, it would be the coup of the century. But if they can do it to Rolex, that means no one is safe.
Well, somebody said in the chat that that they're not going to try to do Grand Seiko because the quality's too high. They can't get to that benchmark. That's pretty funny.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, it is, and actually, but the thing is, besides that though, and it depends. Of course, Grand Seiko covers so much, but I've got my iMessage looking at you, and I sent you a picture of a photograph of that manual wind ones that Jay Chang sent me from earlier in the summer.
huh. You sent that
Japanese
now?
only model. What?
Did you send that now in the messaging?
Well, I can send it again, but if you go into the iMessage, literally go up like four.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I remember that one. Yeah, that was gorgeous. Yeah,
That is
with the
gorgeous.
rice bracelet on it.
Rice bracelet.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, um, I think the MSRP on that, you can get that new for $4,000, and that just kicks the snot out of anything Rolex offers, especially, I'd say value for, I mean, not just value for money, but just in
Yeah, I'm
general.
I'm showing it right now on the screen. Let me double click to make it try to get it full screen here.
Okay,
And I'm showing a bunch of other people's chats, so there,
small
it
baby
is.
gets wiped 235. SBGW 235 is the
Yeah,
reference number.
I'm showing it on the screen with the rice bracelet. Now, is that on your wrist in the picture?
Yes, it is.
And it looks stunning on wrist. It was nice and thin, correct?
Nice and thin. The movement was was very well decorated.
It's a manual.
Um,
Did it have a display back?
yes,
Okay. And it's manual
the
wind.
dial and for this for being a relatively plain Jane for one of the lower tier Grand Seikos, it was just
Well, that's
it
great
was
for a
just
dress watch, though, to have it like that with
oh
no
yeah,
date or anything. Now, do you remember how thick that watch was?
38 millimeters,
No, I mean thickness.
like 11 millimeters if I'm thinking right. It was fairly thin.
Okay. And even with the display back, because sometimes the display back adds a little bit of thickness, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it looks nice and trim on your wrist. It
And
looks really good.
and unlike a lot of other models, that one actually deserved the display back. The movement on that one is finished well enough.
Hmm. Yeah. And so you had that on loan for a short period of time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now
Nice.
here's the thing though. I do like Grand Seikos. I will be thinking about getting one. I just don't like their sports. Their sports watches are still too Seiko-ish.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Ornamental Design says my watchmaker has for years recommended his customers GS instead of Rolex because quality is higher according to him. He's also certified to perform service on luxury Swiss-made watches. Oh well, there you go. Well,
Well, and when the thing is, I was struggling to. Sometimes you ever had a piece? You're holding your piece in your sorry,
yeah, I've
a
had a
watch in
piece.
your
Yeah.
hands, and you're trying to place it. And you're trying to come up with a paradigm. You're trying to figure out where it fits into everything.
Hmm.
And I was looking at, of course, the design of it. Then Archie was talking. He was one of his now 5 Pateks. He's talking about. He was showing his white gold Calatrava,
Uh-huh.
and to me, that thing in steel looked as impressive as
Yeah.
at least the photographs of the Patek Philippe Calatravas did in
Yeah, I
gold.
mean the quality of the dials and the case and everybody bitches that the bracelets aren't any good. I think the bracelets are great.
Yeah,
I think the
I think
bracelet
that.
on my diver's great. And people bitch about the clasp. Well, it's a very functional utilitarian clasp, but it works. It does everything it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
I have no issues at all with the overall quality of those watches.
exactly. And the bracelet, I wish it did allow for some sort. It was the
No micro adjustments,
hmm? Yeah, no micro adjustment. You just had to literally take links in and out.
which is a pain in the
But
neck. Yeah.
but on the other hand, it was solid bracelet, but also kind of light. It didn't seem extremely heavy. So I just put all the links in. It wore a little loose, but it didn't bother me in the slightest.
Well, and that is the benefit of, especially if you go with a watch like the Snowflake that's so lightweight,
Hmm.
you can have it a little bit loose on wrist and it's not as irritating. If you got a heavier watch that's kind of flopping around on your wrist, that's a bigger issue. But like you say, if the bracelet is real flexible and real comfortable, nice and rounded, so it's not digging into your wrist or anything, if it flops around a little bit, it's not as big an issue. So, like if I had a Snowflake, for example, I would have it adjusted for summertime wear, and then in the winter when it's a little loose, I just would put up with it because I hate
Yeah,
having to put links in and out.
it's definitely. I'd say it's more dress. You could probably. I think you might be able to get away with casuals, but sports, not really sports.
Yeah, and that watch, correct me if I'm wrong, that watch did not have a screw down crown, correct?
No, it did not.
So see, that to me is what makes it really a straight up dress watch. And because it's manual wind, you really don't want a screw down crown.
Exactly, because choose your flavor of pain. You either because not having a screw down crown, it's a possibility of water might getting in it. On the other hand, since you are literally winding it up every day or two, that could be
You're going
the
to wear that.
screws.
You're going to
Yeah,
wear it out. Yeah.
exactly.
And you want to be able to just turn it. You don't want to have to unscrew it. You want to just be able to turn it. Thomas Burnett says, nice, but not a Calatrava. Yeah, a more reliable watch than a Calatrava. You're not going to spend a fortune to have it fixed. It's probably not going to fail like a Calatravas do. Yeah, it's not a Calatrava. I would say it's a step or two above. For me, for what I'm looking for is a reliable watch. So, and see, I would rather have a Lexus than a BMW. So I look at things a little differently from that standpoint. So, well, I mean,
And realistically, and 99 people out of 100 would look at that and say, "Wow, that is a really nice watch."
yeah, it's
One
gorgeous.
one out of 100 might say, "Oh, look, they think they're Of course, the Calatrava is kind of it's a very old established dress design anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the Grand Seiko is really for somebody who just wants a really nice watch on wrist and doesn't really care about the name or any of these other things. They just want a really nice, functional, good-looking watch. I think that's the person that buys the Grand Seiko. Now, some people probably buy it because they learn more about it and they become enamored with it. You know, just like people become hooked on Rolexes or whatever. There are people that become hooked on Grand Seikos and end up owning 6 or 8 of them.
But on
But
the what they're talking about is, yeah, I think they are right about that. They go back to the original comment. That offers so much value for the money. I don't think I don't think the counterfeiters it would behoove them to try to counterfeit it.
well, that's right, and I don't think the market is big enough anyway. It'd be a
Well,
lot
and
harder
again,
for them to sell. I mean, they're not going to go
Tannerite.
through all that hassle.
Well, and of course, like anything else, like any criminal or horned minotaurs, they go after the low hanging fruit first.
Absolutely. That's why
So, and
Dillinger. That's
Panerai is
why.
easy.
That's why Dillinger went to banks, right? He said that's where the money is.
Correct. Well, exactly.
So,
I
what do you
think
think?
that was.
What is your real prediction for 2020? How much of an effect do you think this is going to have? What's your timeline on this? We're going to try. We're putting you on the spot here.
I think watch nerds. We're starting. The watch nerds. We're starting to become aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, one of the things I'm starting to hear, like I said, other watch brands starting to raise the alarm, like Tim from Caseback Watches and other folks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the general public will be aware of it until, and like I said, they could be floating around right now. It won't be until they have to be sent in for service that they find out. So it, I'd say before the alarm is raised, generally it might take 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
and they're quietly just
It's
slipping it
one of
in.
these things that it's one of these things that could happen slowly and then all at once, if you know what I mean. In other words, it's
Exactly.
slowly building, they're building them into the system, and then all of a sudden as they start hitting service intervals and the people start becoming more aware, then somebody might question their watch, right? And they might start asking questions and it just might start boiling up. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, and I think it might. I think it might decimate the gray market. It might decimate online sales, and I think it'll drive people to go back to their local ADs, not just to buy new watches,
Hmm.
but to buy used watches.
Which would all be a good thing in my book.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if the collectibility, if it say, because really right now it was like right around the time of the Newman Daytona
Hmm.
record high, that the Newman Daytona auction,
Hmm.
where all these news stories are flashing around saying a $200 watch that was sold back in 19 blah 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 now
Yeah.
sold for like 20 million or whatever.
Yeah.
That's when everyone else. That's when the carpetbaggers started getting into it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The invasion of the moneyed snatchers. There before then there was just watch nerds,
Mm-hmm.
and we would
And and
enthusiasts.
and now we've got all these people bragging in all the forums about all the money that they've made on their watches. Like a guy made a post the other day that I replied to. I think it was like 1978 or something. His dad had a sub and he paid like $800 for it, and he was all excited that his dad sold it for like 18 grand or something, right?
Hmm.
And I ran the numbers on it. If he'd have taken that same amount of money and invested it and gotten a 10% return, annual return, he'd have like 60 grand or something, right? I'm like, hey, he still didn't do very well, right?
Well,
And
okay.
and people don't do the math on this stuff, right? They
Well, the trouble is the people that make the insane numbers are people who are not interested in investing in watches anyway. Because to rack up that kind of information, you're going to have to hold on to that watch for a long time.
Yeah, I mean
You're not going to hold on to a watch for a long
he
time
had it since
unless you absolutely,
1978.
yeah, you're not going to do that unless you absolutely freaking love the watch.
Now, and here's the thing. That deal that his dad, or it was either his dad or his grandfather, but that what they did, and he made the point that he was able to use the watch for 40 years, right? Fine, that's okay. Uh, but here's the thing with that type of a situation, that most people would not have invested that same amount of money in an investment and left it there for 40 years also. So, I mean, for me to say, well, if you took that money and put it in an investment for 40 years, you'd have this much money. Yeah, you would, but most people don't do that either. So maybe he did come out ahead by having that money in the watch because he actually had the money still, right? He didn't spend it, in
Right.
other words. So, I mean, if you'd have taken $900 and put it in some stock, and the S&P has averaged over 10% over that time, right? You would double your money over 7 years, but most people don't put the money in and leave it.
Now,
And that's
how
why
much
most
would he have
people are.
made? How much would he have made if he had put it into Bitcoin back in 1978?
Yeah, he'd have to figure out how to do that because Bitcoin came around in 2009, right? So, but
So,
yeah,
like I said,
anybody that bought Bitcoin 10 years ago and they kept it, they're sitting pretty, right? Very pretty.
right. I just think and I've been kind of not really paying attention to the live stream comments myself, but to me, it sounds it. Here's the weird thing: it's almost like a perfect storm because for this to happen, it would take it would take a bunch of bad things happening all at once, and that would somehow inexplicably could combine into being a good thing for the collector community.
Well, I think really the two things that have to happen, and only these two things, is they need to come up with the high quality fakes. That has to be a real thing, and they need to get them into the gray market. If they can do those two things, now they have to do it in decent volume, right? But if
Yeah.
they can do those
Well,
two things, I think your
I'm
whole
not even sure. I'm not even sure about that because
enough to get attention. I'll put it that way. I mean,
enough to get attention. Yeah.
yeah. So let's say maybe 5% of the gray market, if they penetrated like 5% of it, that
Yeah.
would probably be enough to really raise a
Yeah.
stink.
Or yeah, a huge stink.
If it was 1%, maybe not.
Or enough to where, for instance, like, well, I was going to say if Houdinki could get their hands on one and basically determine and take a watchsmith and the did an expose and their watchsmith said Jesus Christ,
Well,
or
if somebody from
who,
Hodinkee bought one,
yeah.
right,
Well,
thinking it
I
was
don't,
real, and then discovered 6 months later, and then did a hell of a story on it, right?
yeah.
That would be a good one too.
Well, the trouble is, I think Houdinki they've been in bed so long with the watch manufacturers that would be the last thing
Hey, if enough
that
of
they
these are
talk about.
floating around, and the right people get them, it could be a big story. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. It's just the whole thing is going to be and it's going to be interesting to see how Rolex reacts. I mean, the whole thing is fodder for speculation and entertainment and
Now,
all kinds.
If Rolex really wanted, if Rolex really wanted to stop it, here's how they do it. Hi, this is the Rolex database helpline. Can I help you? Yeah, hi. I'm Bob at Bob's Watches.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has sent. I've just received this to buy. Could you authenticate this piece for me?
Mm-hmm.
If Rolex did that, that would stop. That would protect the gray market. But
But here's the
Rolex,
thing, though. It could go either way. If Rolex said, no, we don't do that, that could also hurt the gray market big time.
oh yeah,
So either
it could, yeah.
way, it works for Rolex as far as harming the gray market. The
Well,
question is, is it going to harm the whole market? That's the question Rolex has to grapple with, right?
let me put it this way. I think if as long as Rolex, the brand, and their ADs are making money, I don't think they give a shit about the rest of the market. And
Exactly.
so,
But if it starts harming that market because people just get pissed off and just don't want to buy Rolexes, which I don't think is going to happen. But
no,
if
I mean,
that
like I
did
said,
happen,
I think it's going to bring people back. I mean, I think the only it once the gray market gets hit with it, stung
mhm,
with it, the only people that'll want to buy used Rolex is the ADs because they
mhm,
can authenticate it.
yeah.
That I think that'll in turn bring more. That will take people off the internet, off the gray market, back into their ADs and buying it at
And
the used section.
and the problem with my earlier idea about Rolex kind of publicizing this and warning people, in effect, don't buy these watches off eBay and from
Mm.
anybody that's not an authorized dealer because there's these fakes out there. The problem is if they kind of acknowledge that there's these high quality fakes out there, it's almost also acknowledging that, you know, why can somebody so easily fake it if it's such a good watch, right? I mean, it kind of emphasizes the fact that it kind of is a machine-made watch and it can be faked. So that's kind of a double-edged sword also. So there's a lot of moving parts in this whole thing, right? They've got to come up with a way to differentiate their real watch from this fake, other than the fact that somebody just faked their watch, right? They got it's got to be something about their watch that is better still that they can't really fake, to really make that case as to why you shouldn't just buy the fake.
Hmm.
If you can buy, let's say you can buy the fake for $1,000, a sub.
There's Rolex and there's almost Rolex.
Yeah,
And
yeah, but if the fake is
well, no,
that good,
well, not that good, but looks that good. That doesn't mean, and that might be
what
another
happens if they're
possibility.
actually that good? What happens if the movement is also really good, just as good as a Rolex? Do you think they're going to be able to get to that point? Because think about it, if
I
they're
think
selling it for
Rolex
a
spends.
grand,
I don't think that. I don't think really to that point. I don't think they spend that much in R&D.
well, they don't have to if they copy Rolex.
It's not just simply coming up with the design. It's the tools for the design. It's the process. They're not going to open their, the fake. It's not going to be Chinese fake Rolex Foundry Incorporated.
I'm just amazed, Clive, that they're able to do this to the level that they're able to do it already. I'm just pretty amazed that they can do all of this and that people don't catch them and don't realize what they're doing and shut them down. I guess the Chinese government and all that, I guess they just don't give a damn.
No,
And
China. Oh my God, no. The China. God, those are the most. Don't get me started.
yeah, and so it's pretty amazing to me that these guys are able to do this to the extent that they do. I mean, this isn't the only thing they fake, right? You name it, they fake it. Um,
Well, and like I
it's
said, the Chinese have been our uh, practical, political, and ideological rivals for like decades.
and
So,
meanwhile we've
if
been
they hurt a
making
bunch of fat
yeah
if they rip
meanwhile
off a bunch of, if they
meanwhile
rip
we've
off a
been
bunch of
making them
fat,
rich.
lazy, and what?
Yeah, meanwhile we've been making them rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to them, if they're basically screwing over a bunch of fat, lazy, stupid, indolent Americans, well, screw those guys.
Yeah.
Good on us.
And Jeff says the best replicas come from Switzerland. Jeff Klein in the chat.
Probably the Chinese are buying up stuff in Switzerland. They're doing it here.
So it's interesting. Maybe some of these Rolex fakes are coming from Switzerland. Rolex watches are like simple chocolate cake made by a company with instruments that count all the air pockets in the breading. Okay, Chi-Town.
In other words, they've got the process. They've got it to where it's the consistent effects results every time.
ID guy says it's very likely that they could go that far. I guess he's talking about the quality. It'll be down to the finer materials at the end of the day, like the grade of steel used. Newer processes will probably have to be implemented. Well, my guess is they'll be able to get a hold of 904L steel. I mean, that's no big deal. I mean, it's not a precious metal, forgetting about what all these collectors say about the Rolex steel, it's better than gold and all this. They'll be able to get a hold of that steel.
I don't know. I got to be honest. Though my date just 41 with the blue Romans.
Mm-hmm.
The steel on that one, I have to admit, looks spectacular.
Well, yeah, but like I say, these fakers will be able to get 904L steel. So
yeah.
Counterfeiting dollar bills seems easier than faking watches. Carlos in the house. I'm sure they're doing that too. The only thing they can't counterfeit, Carlos, is Bitcoin. There you go. And they've tried, trust me. All the king's horses and all the king's men have tried. All right, Clivester, I'm going to let you go. Do you have any concluding thoughts?
There might be a day of reckoning coming. Explore other brands, including Grand Seiko.
Mm-hmm.
Don't follow the herd.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pay over MSRP for a freaking current production Rolex. Don't.
That is very good advice. By the way, Vegas says, I've never seen a fake that looks anywhere near a real one to the trained eye, so I find this a tad far-fetched. Vegas in the house. Well, we'll see, Vegas. This is what's exciting about all this. We will see. Somebody will see. And ID guy referring more to movements. If they manage to match them visually, deep down there will be some flaws that I'm sure microscopes or grading machines could pick up. Here in the EQ, quite a lot of are willing to buy a clone versus whatever he said. Okay, can't read some of that shorthand. And that message was just retracted. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for coming on, Clivester. This is you've definitely stirred up some thought and some discussion, and it's going to be exciting to see how all this unfolds. Go watch the original broadcast, the video from the Clivester. The link is in the description on this video, folks. Definitely check that out. And I'm sure you all already subscribe to his channel, The Watch-Wrangler. And make sure you've got the bell clicked so you'll get a notification when he puts. That's how I found this video, is I got a notification because I've got the bell clicked. That's how that works. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. There you go, folks. That's how you call into the show, just like that. Clivester was backlit on FaceTime, so that's why I wasn't showing him most of the time. But you heard his wonderful voice, and you can see him on his channel. So, get those headphones off. They're not very comfortable. Sony could make, they're great monitors for doing audio recordings and things like that, but they're not that comfortable after about 10 or 15 minutes. Later, Clive says, Donald, they have sent these replicas to Rolex factory to inspect. All right. Well, I think I think we had a great discussion on that. I don't know how much more I can add to that. Let's do a quick time check. There's a time check. We've been on the air for about an hour. We started at, I think we started at 4:15, if I recall correctly. I believe that's when we started. So we've been on the air for about an hour. And all is good. All is good. Again, I didn't ask Clyvester if he has one of the titanium Apple cards. Because he has an iPhone, he can get one. This is titanium, folks. How cool is that? It's etched. How cool is that? Let me see here. Let's see what Clyvester says. Was wanting to ask you a Mac Pro cheese grater question. Oh, well, call back in, Clive. Call back in. Let me make sure I get FaceTime going again. Call back in the same way you did so that we can give them the, I'll call you, see if I can get through to Clyvester. Calling Clyvester on FaceTime. Oh, there we go. Let me
Craig.
get my headphones. He's got a Mac Pro question.
Okay, now you've got a cheese grater, right?
Yes, I have a 2010 that I've done a bunch of upgrades on. It's in my guest room. It's not my main workstation anymore, but it's my backup. And it was a hell of a workhorse for years.
Still is. Did you have a one or two core? Did you have one with one or two processors on it?
Mine was the 6-core.
Oh, so you got it as a 6-core.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what are you using? What should I use as an upgrade to the video card on it?
Well, that's a good question because I didn't upgrade mine. Mine has the 2 video cards in it. Okay.
Which one? Was it the 5770 or the 5870?
Oh,
Or is it
geez.
NVIDIA?
I'm not sure, but I've got a unboxing video on my channel that tells all about it. But it was whatever was available at the time. It was never changed, and there was a couple of ways you could do it. You could get 2 cards, or you could get 1 card. You know, I got 2 cards, and I never upgraded them. So, yeah, and that's a very good question because there are people that really love the cheese graters and are doing some pretty epic upgrades, but you can only upgrade it so much is the problem.
Well, yeah, but of course I took mine from 2 quads to 2 octos. I mean to 2 hexes. So I went mine from an 8 to a 12 core, and took it up to 3.46, and then just the RAM on that thing is dirt cheap now.
Well, see, I've got the RAM maxed out on mine, which is
128.
Yeah, whatever the max
Oh
was.
no! You only have
Maybe
the
it was
6 core,
64.
so like 56 or 64.
Yeah, whatever the max is that I could put in mine, I put in mine, and I upgraded that after the fact. I bought that from OWC Computers, right? Other World
Right.
Computing, MacSales.com. And so,
But you can upgrade the fuck out of that thing. Oh, excuse me, you can upgrade the hell out of that thing because the PCIe. So even it only has USB 2. Stick in a USB 3 cord.
yeah,
the
I did that.
PCIe.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I upgraded the USB, and of course you put SSDs in there.
Right.
I took out
Now,
the optical drives, and I put SSDs in that port so that I could still put 4 hard drives in it, right, in the hard
Right.
drive bays. And I had 2 SSDs in there. And what I do is I have my programs on one SSD, and then on the other SSD, I would have my working files for Final Cut Pro.
Right.
And so if I'm editing video, 4K video or something, it's always accessing it on the SSD, but a different SSD than where my programs are.
Right.
That gives you the maximum performance. So yeah, mine was editing 4K video with no trouble. The only reason I'm using a MacBook Pro laptop now as my main workstation because the portability. I just
Right.
got tired of carrying the cheese grater around when I was traveling.
Oh, Jesus, God, no. Hell no.
And carrying it down to the bus and just loading everything in the bus was just a pain. And so now I can just take the laptop down and I have extra monitors and everything already in place. I just plug it in and I'm just good to go. But
Well, you see, I was using like a 2011 27-inch iMac. So, for the stuff I do, it's pretty basic. But, eventually those spinning hard drives die, and it is a real pain in the ass.
yeah, and I don't even back up my SSD anymore, my operating system and all that. I used to keep a
Hmm.
clone of that just in case it would fail. But I don't even bother with that anymore. The SSDs are so reliable. I do back up all my data, of course, but I don't back up the operating system SSD. But yeah, you've got a workhorse there, and I love them. They're nice and quiet.
You
Assuming
know how much I got that sucker for?
$500.
350.
Yeah, but then you've put money into it.
Yeah, but still.
How much do you think you've got total in it now?
Yeah, let's see. Three, five, probably it's like seven.
That's it?
Yeah.
Wow. You've done good.
Well,
Yeah, you've done real good. Now, how many monitors are you driving with the video card?
you see, just basically two, but I'm kind of thinking I might, and yeah, it's like, do I, of course, the 57. I've got a 57, and actually, I actually have. The reason why I also did this is that my partner is on a 2009 Mac Pro
Hmm.
that was originally a file server, and that thing has been a tank. That thing has not given me the slightest problem. That thing has been going for 10 years.
Oh yeah, these
Not a
things
hiccup,
that
nary.
just
Yeah,
keep them clean. Keep
yep.
the blowers and all that. Keep everything clean. So as the fans and all that kind of stuff. If you've got like cats and stuff like that, it'll get in there and it'll cause problems. But if you keep everything clean and all that, they're designed to sit there and run 24/7. They're
Well,
they're they're beast.
basically workstation design with server class components.
Yeah,
No wonder Apple hates them so much because if they halfway supported them, I think we could keep them running forever.
that's right. And now the new one that's going to come out is going to be a beast. They're finally learned their lesson and they're going to build it right again. Um, but
They
yeah,
decided to throw the trash can in the trash can.
yeah. I'm tempted to do some upgrading on mine if I ever start using it again. It's in the guest room and I do use it occasionally. But yeah, I might do some upgrading just for fun and figure out what the best graphics card I could put in it. Mine, I had to do kind of a kludgy workaround to run three monitors on mine
Hmm.
for some reason. Uh, but yours should be able to easily run three monitors simultaneously if you put a better graphics card in there, right?
Yeah, I'd yeah, you've already got a six core in there, so yeah.
Yeah,
It,
I would. I think the biggest upgrade you can do is three decent monitors. You will get so spoiled having three monitors. Right now, I have two big monitors and then the monitor on my laptop, right? So I have my
now,
messaging app on the laptop.
what are you using to connect? What interface or periphery are you using? Are we still in the air?
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ, people are listening to this.
yeah.
Okay.
Some people
Well,
might be
what are you
interested.
using? DVI or mini display port or what?
Well, see, that's the good point. Is I have a whole video on that because it was kind of there's these kludgy adapters that you had to
Hmm.
use. When I went to three monitors, it became a cluster. You know what? Running two
Yeah.
was fine, was a piece of cake. But
It became a Charlie Foxtrot.
as soon as I tried to run the third, there were these two special adapters you had to get from Apple and all this stuff. And I did a video on it. It's a mess. But hopefully yours will run 3 without going through any of that. It depends on the port on the graphics card, what the graphics card requires, and you might have to get an adapter converting that to whatever your monitor cable has, right?
Right.
So
So display port. Well, and it seems like everyone's walking away from DVI. DVI is like yesterday's news.
yeah, but you just have to make that work, but having the multiple monitors is just a godsend. I mean, I
Well, and
love
monitors, and they're so cheap compared to.
exactly. I mean, I love being able to have 2 different browsers
Mhm.
on with 4 different tabs on each one. And if I'm editing in Final Cut Pro, I've got Final Cut Pro up on one. I've got, my email or whatever up on the other one. I can still keep working.
I've got a gorgeous. I just have one at the office, but it's a gorgeous Samsung 32-inch display.
yeah, I mean, I would still add another one. You can't have too much real estate because if you're working on something, when I get back from covering an event, I download all my photos into for the Photos app, and then I've got Final Cut on the other monitor. I'm sitting here editing, photos, and I'm playing around on Final Cut, and I don't have to minimize something and restore something and all that. I just keep everything running all the time, and it just does fine. And you can just get a lot more done that way.
I'd urge everyone to look into those. For instance, if you're wanting a spare computer for the kids to bang on or something like that,
Yeah. Now,
and
by
you
the
want them
way,
more.
yours will not upgrade to the newest operating system, right?
No, it will. If I get the right monitor, I mean, if I get a metal capable graphics card, it'll go up to Mojave, but it won't go up to Catalina without some hacking.
Yeah. Well, Catalina's a bag of hurt, so that's a good thing. I'm not going to upgrade to Catalina for at least a year.
Yeah.
There's a couple of 32-bit apps that I use that I love that will break. Any 32-bit app breaks. It only supports 64-bit. So there's that. And there's also a bunch of other issues.
Well, the funny part is, when I was a younger man, I was working at like small firms or small offices or whatnot, and I would be going around saying, "God, these old computers, these old stations, old software. God, if they just put their money and upgraded, we could, it would make life so much easier. We could get so much more done."
Hmm.
Now I've completely come full circle. Now it's like, okay, everything is working. God damn it, everything is working. All the peripheries, all the
Hmm.
OS, it's all talking to each other. We're not going to touch anything. We're not going to upgrade anything. We're just going to go with the first longest statement, so we won't have to screw with it any longer. Now we can actually get some work done instead of messing with the technology.
Yeah, if it works and does everything you need to do, then let me decline that call. If it works and does everything you need to do, leave it the heck alone, especially if it's a workstation that you count on for getting your work done. All right, well, somebody says they've got a 5K iMac, I guess. Those are fantastic. Yeah,
Okay.
there's several Mac users here in the chat.
Yeah, but okay. Here's the problem with it though. As Craig was saying, any computer after time will suck in dust and and debris and pet hair or whatever. You cannot clean out the inside of an iMac without taking it to a professional.
That's a
A
good
Mac
point.
Pro, easy peasy. Stupid easy maintenance.
That's a good point.
Bulletproof reliability.
And
If you ever rebuilt a PC, you will look inside a cheese grater Mac Pro and you will stare at it like a dumbfounded chimpanzee because the design it's the
it's so
apex of
well
computer.
made. It's insane. It's like when I first got mine and did the video on it, I was saying that this is like if Lexus made a computer, this is what they would have made, right? I mean, it's just everything is just so well made. Everything fits so well. When you put that side panel up, right?
Hmm.
It just fits like there's like you the fit and finish on the whole thing is just insane quality. And the way it works, you crank that one lever and it just locks everything down. I mean, yeah, it's an amazing piece of kit, but it's heavy as all get out.
Yeah.
And you carry that sucker around. I mean, see, I look at my laptop that I'm using right now as my main workstation computer as a throwaway. It'll be 3 years and I'll just upgrade it, and I'll give it to somebody or whatever. It's not like the cheese grater where you could just keep it 10, 15 years and it's just fine, right? It's not the same type of thing. So yeah, you did good. Yeah, hell yeah. I just throw another monitor or two on it and just rock and roll.
All right.
Carry on. We're going to wrap this puppy up and I'm going to go eat.
What are you having?
I'm going to have a sweet potato. Okay, this is what I'm going to make. I'm going to tell you folks how I make this. This is my special, quickie, super nourishing meal. I take a good-sized sweet potato, and I have a potato peeler. I just peel off the outside part, right? I stick it a couple of times with a knife. I wrap it in a paper towel, and I soak the paper towel with water. I put it in the microwave for 5 minutes. While it's in the microwave, I take 2 good-sized tomatoes, and I cut them up big time. I take the core, a little hard core part out of the middle. I cut them up big time. And then I take either some salmon or some chicken or something and put with the with the tomatoes. And then I have a half an avocado ready to go, right? And then when the potatoes come out, I take the tomatoes and whatever meat is in there. It's either fish or like chicken or something like that. I put that back in the microwave for about 2.5 minutes. And while that's cooking, I take and I slice up the sweet potato big time. I slice it up and cut it, both which ways, cross-hatch, cutting. And then I take the avocado and I spread it on there like butter. I spread it on the sweet potato. Then I take a little bit of vinegar, put that on. And then I take right now the microwave finishes with the tomato and all that. I pour that over the top. I sprinkle some hemp seeds on top, maybe a little bit of mustard, maybe some pepper. And that is a fantastic, freaking, very nutritious meal because the sweet potato has a lot of nutrition in it, just that.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, the avocado has a lot of nutrition, the fish or chicken, whatever else I put on there. It's just a quick thing to do and cheap. Big sweet potatoes are cheap, right? And very filling. And try it, you guys. You will like that recipe right there. Quick meal. I'm going to make that here in a minute or two.
Sounds good.
All right,
Enjoy.
everybody. Carry on. Thanks for calling in, Clivester.
Thanks for having me on, Craig.
Take care. All right, there you go. We solved all the world's problems just like that, including the problems with nutrition. Just like that. And Carlos had 3 major issues on his MacBook Pro late 2016 that needed mainboard replaced. I'm worried as my Apple Care ends in 2 months. There you go. Yeah, I'm not going to keep mine much out of Apple Care warranty. I'll be buying I always keep them. I'll probably keep mine in warranty. Craig, any plans to put that recipe on your website? There you go. I might have put a video up showing it, but I've put video up showing my almond milk that I make. I've put videos up, I think, showing the juice that I make. And I don't think I put up the sweet potato dish, but I might do that sometime. I might absolutely do that. That sweet potato dish is fantastic. All right, everybody, I'm going to pull this up on the phone, and we're going to wrap this puppy up. We're going to wrap this puppy up. Does anyone else have problems with your iPhone no longer playing sound through the Lightning port? No, I haven't had that problem. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Hey, click subscribe, click the bell.